NBC's Gary Grumbach is reporting from Baltimore. And with me here, Veronica Cardenas, former Assistant Chief Counsel for ICE. Gary, I know there had been this offer for a plea deal that he refused. Tell us everything else we know.
So as Kilmer Obrego Garcia was walking out of federal custody on Friday afternoon, his attorneys were working behind the scenes on this potential plea deal. And there were a couple options that appeared to be on the table all weekend. One of them was to plead guilty to the two charges against him in Tennessee on human smuggling, to serve that time in a federal prison in the U.S., and then be deported to Costa Rica, who has said they would welcome him as a refugee, let him free, and of course he could speak the language, Spanish, in Costa Rica. The other option was to be deported to Uganda as soon as Wednesday and not plead guilty to those charges in Tennessee. It does seem like things are leaning towards the Uganda route, but his attorneys are fighting tooth and nail to try to prevent his deportation to Uganda, considering it potentially a dangerous place for him to be. We saw him here with his attorneys and a large crowd of supporters of him, community activists, elected officials, and others. They walked inside for his 8 a.m. appointment. He was detained by ICE at his appointment. His attorney came out 30 minutes afterwards and said he got very little information, one, about why he was being detained, two, where he would be detained within the U.S., what ICE detention facility, because there are none in Maryland, there are none in the D.C. area, where he would be going, and three, the attorney couldn't even get any paperwork about his detention. So they have filed a lawsuit in Maryland, and we expect he could be deported to Uganda as soon as Wednesday afternoon. Chris.
Gary Grumbach, thank you for that. I want to play, Veronica, exactly what Obrego's lawyers said after he was detained again today.
He'd been given a notice requiring him to check in at 8 a.m. this morning. The notice stated that the reason was interview. Clearly that was false. There was no need for them to take him into ICE detention. He was already on electronic monitoring from the U.S. Marshal Service and basically on house arrest. The only reason that they've chosen to take him into detention is to punish him. Punish him for exercising his constitutional rights. His constitutional right to fight back against being illegally deported to El Salvador.
Is what we saw this morning standard practice?
I would say it is. First of all, Obrego Garcia does have a withholding of removal. So it withholds his removal to El Salvador. We saw that the government already did that illegally. And this ICE check-in, he was going to be detained. It's interesting that when ICE reviews whether they should detain someone or not, it is by the same standard as the federal government, whether that person is going to be a danger or at flight risk. And the federal courts had issued his release from federal custody. He was on monitoring. But ICE, in the ICE context, ICE, the officers themselves, have the ability to make that determination and to trump anything that an immigration judge says for immigration purposes. And so in this case, everything seems like it's being sped up. Usually when someone goes to an ICE check-in, especially in Obrego Garcia's case, because number one, he has been brought back to this country with human smuggling charges, and he is fighting for his constitutional rights. It seems like in this case, he was going to be detained. His lawyers knew that he was going to be detained, and that's why once he was detained immediately today, they filed a petition in the federal court so that he can get his day in court.
Yeah, and obviously his lawyers say none of those charges hold any weight. And also what is different here is Uganda, right? It's not like in the past we were deporting large numbers of folks to African countries, for example. But with this timeline, just 72 hours, what legal options does he have?
So the first legal option is filing a habeas case in the federal court, and it seems like that was already done. So that stays his removal because his lawyers mentioned, and this is true, he should get his day in court to prove whether he will suffer persecution or torture if he is sent to Uganda. Another thing that's different in this case is the way that the government is using the immigration matter to manufacture a decision in the federal case. They want him to plead guilty to something, and they had stated that if he did plead guilty, that they would assist him in going to Costa Rica, where he would be received as a refugee. And because he wants to pursue that case, he wants to have his right and have a jury decide the merits of that case, present his case. He's been given the other option of going to Uganda, which I do think that in this case, the federal courts are going to see that, and they're going to hold immigration to their burden here.
Is there, though, a possibility that we could see something similar to what happened when he was sent to El Salvador, that even after deportation, a judge rules that he needs to come back?
Right, and I think that is probably the reality of things. And that's why when we saw Abrego Garcia speak with that emotion, he knows that that is a possibility. He was not supposed to be deported to El Salvador to CICAT in the first place. The government acted illegally then. And even though this fight is in the courts, there's nothing to stop ICE from doing that same thing all over again to him and his family.
Victoria Cardenas, thank you for coming in. Much appreciated.